Hey everyone, I'm going to pick up where we left off today in class. We started talking about the square of a binomial. We didn't actually name it, but that is what we were doing earlier today. We discussed and practiced how easy it is, with some practice, to isolate x by finding the square root and getting two values for x if it's in that nice squared form. We're going to move on and get into something like this that looks a little bit different than this first one, the square of binomial. So what we need to do is manipulate this expression over here so that it matches this square of a binomial. And what that means is we're going to have to add a C term to this that's going to condense it down to a nice parentheses that can be squared. So again, that it looks something like this. Here's what we are going to do. This is called creating a perfect square. We need to find a C term to add on to this side of the equation. I'm not even worried right now about the answer. What I'm trying to do is create a perfect trinomial with this here. And what I need to do is add a C term. And lucky for us, that C term is in the formula of C equals B over 2 squared. So the B term is this negative 16. Again, A, this is standard form. A is what's front of the x squared. B is in what's front of the x. And then the C term, that's what we're trying to determine right now. So all I need to do is figure out what my B term is, which is going to be this negative 16. And I'm going to plug it into our formula here. So this is going to look like negative 16 over 2 squared. Figure out what's in the parentheses. Negative 16 divided by 2 is negative 8. And all that's going to be squared. And just like what we talked about earlier today, it doesn't matter if that number inside the parentheses is positive or negative. If we're squaring it, we're going to end up with a positive number. And that positive number is 64. So I'm going to then add that 64 back in for our C here. And I'm going to end up with x squared minus 16x plus 64. Now, adding that 64, adding that C term is going to allow me to turn this into a square of a binomial, which is going to help us solve for x. Thinking back to what we talked about today, to factor this out, I need factors of 64 that add up to negative 16. And those are going to be negative 8 and negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 8 is positive 64. Negative 8 plus negative 8 is negative 16. So we're good. So I can turn this in factor form as x minus 8, x minus 8. Now, because these two terms are identical, I can condense this even further as x minus 8 squared. So we set out to find the square of a binomial. We did that by adding the C term, and we got it to match, go back to our square of a binomial. It's not going to match, but it is in the same form where we can easily solve for x. Let's do one more. I'm going to do x squared plus 20x plus C. So these exercises, we are trying to figure out what C is to create that perfect trinomial. In order to figure out what C is, we're going to use this formula time and time again, B over 2 squared. The B term here is this positive 20. So I'm going to plug that in for B. I'm going to get 20 over 2 squared. 20 divided by 2 is 10. 10 squared is 100. So that C term is going to be 100. I'm going to rewrite this as a perfect square trinomial. And now I can figure out the factors. And a little tip, instead of having to do this process over and over again, my term inside the parentheses is just going to be half of this B term. So B divided by 2, we figured out that to be 10. That's going to be my term that goes in here. Plus 10, plus 10. Again, if I FOIL this out, I get back to my original equation here, and I can condense this. Since these are identical terms being multiplied by each other, we can use our square term. Cool. So that's all I got for this video. I want you guys to go to the second part of the worksheet that we were working on Monday and figure out creating a perfect square trinomial by figuring out the C term and doing exactly what we just did in these notes here. Thanks for watching.